How's it going, guys? Mr. Music Fan here. So essentially, I'm deciding to make a re review of my original Hunting Party album review, and the reason for that is that I felt the need to kind of like give a more in depth analysis on this album as opposed to the last review, which was more a reactionary type of video to the first couple of times I heard this album and just being so surprised by it and so happy about it because this is the band's most aggressive and visceral album since 2003's Meteora. And I say that in a sense because the songs here just sound absolutely killer. Each song here has a quality and has a visceral aggressiveness it just does not let up at all. So this is a re-review. So let's just get straight right down to it, essentially. So the sixth studio album, The Hunting Party, was originally conceived by Mike Shinoda. This had followed after the last tour supporting the last album, Living Things, where he created demos for the follow up to Living Things while the band was touring. Now, essentially, the last two albums, Living Things and A Thousand Suns, especially A Thousand Suns, they dabbled more into an electronic rock vein. A Thousand Suns less so, and Living Things a little more so. And this kind of like took the band further from their new metal, their rock dynamics, their rock formula, and kind of like that made them kind of experiment with different things that challenged themselves and even more so challenged their audience. And so these two albums were more dabbled into electronic influences. Um, they were more musically expansive. They were more lyrically expansive. Excuse me. Especially A Thousand Suns, which was just this very rich lyrical depth of a very cohesive album in a sense. And Living Things essentially was a return to rock music somewhat, but still keeping the electronic sweetness that A Thousand Suns dabbled with a lot. So as Mike Shinoda was making demos for the follow up to Living Things, he then found an article which was essentially I won't say complaining, but it was making a declarative statement about the state of rock music today. And essentially, it was mentioning that rock music had become more complacent and that it was less about the condition of the human heart and more about a catchy pop jingle for a commercial advertisement. And this really rang really deeply with Mike Shinoda, as he also found in Japanese culture that there was these people named called herbivores, which are essentially people who wait around for opportunities to come to them, rather than them going out of the house and looking for opportunities themselves. Like not getting a girlfriend to marry and start a family, or not getting a job, or not going to college. And then Mike Shinoda realized that these things really related to what the state of rock music had become over the years. And upon his further inspection of the demos he created while on tour, he realized that it was not right for the band. He realized that the band should not be making this kind of music to fall into into a complacency, into the state of which rock music was turning into. So then he challenged all the whole band to kind of abandon that original approach and adopt an approach that is more visceral and more aggressive, and something that was more in your face, literally. And so out of that you get the sixth studio album, The Hunting Party. And as I've said in the last review, this album is just mind blowing. It's really mind blowing. And like you definitely get, this is essentially the band's exploring or re-exploring the roots of their childhood. This means like bands that they listened to before Hybrid Theory. So in many ways you can describe this album as the Hybrid Theory, a prequel to Hybrid Theory in a way. So now you get a lot of these songs which is the band's most hard rocking and their most visceral and aggressive songs in years. Like ever since Minutes to Midnight, the band had been shying away from this aggressiveness, from this harsh sound. But with all these songs, they kind of really harken back to a time, not so much to recreate a Hybrid Theory Part Three, but they reach into a deep ethos that was prominent before Hybrid Theory, like the influences that they were listening before they made that album. Like definitely the influences you can hear from Gorilla Biscuits, Helmet, Pavement, at the Drive-In especially, you hear an At the Drive-In influence on here, and there's a lot of these visceral aggressive bands you get on this album. Like it's such a hard aggressive album. The one thing I have, like, one few things I have to mention of this album's sound is that, like, of course it's obvious that it's visceral and aggressiveness, but it's visceral and aggressive because two key players make a prominent role in this album: Brad Delson and Rob Borden. Brad Delson, I say especially, has improved phenomenally. He has improved by leaps and bounds on this album. His album is just straight full of his guitar work, which has just vastly just evolved into this really mad, this really aggressive type of sound. His guitar playing has become very aggressive and visceral at this point. And sorry. So you get a chock full of guitar riffs on here. Like, I know what I mean by a chock full. I mean each and every song of this album has an aggressive guitar riff that is just, that is just mean and very just like gut, and like throat in the gut like thing, like ugh. And what you also get too is solos. Like Brad Delson's solos has just, like his riffing, just improved by leaps and bounds. A lot, like I'm thinking of even the solo of War, for instance, that is just, you have to hear it for yourself. It's just take no prisoners, take no anybody, and just like and boom, there, gone. And I also have to bring Rob Borden into the picture, because Rob Borden has also improved by leaps and bounds on this album as far as his drumming. His drumming is just phenomenal on this album. Like there's a lot of fills on here. There's a lot of drum fills. There's a lot of cymbal crashing. A lot of his kick drum is prominent here. In fact, if I heard correctly, Brad Delson during the making of this album struggled so hard to make the drum parts for this album that he literally broke his back while making the album, while doing his drum parts. If that doesn't give you your tough, aggressive, visceral drumming, I don't know what does. And a lot of the other, like Chester especially, like brings back that throaty, that really like that tough, like very ethereal screaming that he had been known for very early in Linkin Park's career. And like for the first time on a Linkin Park album too, you get guest spots. Rakim guest spots on Guilty All the Same. Tom Morello guest stars also on Drawbar. Paige Hamilton from Helmet appears on All for Nothing. And Darren from System of a Down appears on Rebellion, which I would say is a very System of a Down-like song. This is the most System that the band has ever sounded, obviously because Darren is there. And Darren's guitar playing is prominent, so that makes Rebellion a very Toxicity era-like song, which the band just does also very well. The one song I have to mention, I did mention it before in my last review, War. My gosh, this song just destroys everything. It destroys everything else that they have done. I would even argue, even from Hybrid Theory and Meteora, is just destroyed everything that they had done prior. It's like no other Linkin Park song, even from the ones from Hybrid Theory, although I will say they're still great. even comes close to the visceral aggressiveness of this song. And when the first time I first heard it, I was like literally eyes wide open, jaw dropped. Yeah, you get the point. And really, this song is just, it's a return to Linkin Park. It's a return to form for them without repeating a Hybrid Theory Part 3 on us. The lyric writing also makes just as a return to visceral aggressiveness as the music in a way. There's a lot of the lyrical writing here referencing to war, referencing to conflict, referencing to a lot of the lyrical writing referencing to like conflict, struggle, aggressiveness, although not aggressiveness for aggressiveness sake. Like, so yeah, the lyrics just do make a really hard back to aggressiveness as the music does, and it's phenomenal. The only softer lyrical song I can describe is Mark the Graves, which I really like. It definitely is definitely a Deftones sounding like song. At least if you listen to that song, the dynamics of the guitars does sound as if it could be a Deftones song, and it's probably the softest sounding song as far as the rock music is concerned for me. And I've already explained about Drawbar. I thought it was going to be this really really awesome thing between Tom and Linkin Park, but it comes out to be more of like a very melodic, soft intro to Final Masquerade, which is the second to last track off the album. And while I am disappointed with it somewhat, but now listening to it later on, I understand its place on the album now. And not my favorite Linkin Park intro ever, but it serves a purpose in that sense. So as far as my rating for this album is concerned, I would give The Hunting Party probably a 5. It is by no means not a perfect Linkin Park album, and this is by far not the most heaviest, the most aggressive, or the most visceral rock album in music ever, because there are bands that are way heavier, more tougher, and more aggressive than Linkin Park. But when you take Linkin Park's discography into account by its own merit, and you take this album on its own merit, then it is definitely their most aggressive and most hard rocking album to date. An album chock full of riffs, an album chock full of screaming, an album chock full of aggressive visceralness, and an album that really brings Linkin Park back into the forefront. They bring the band back from a very kind of electronic sweetness, and they kind of bring them back into a renewed awakening, a renewed energy, a renewed jolt of rock music energy that has been missing for quite some time now. So The Hunting Party is now, well, actually no. To date, still A Thousand Suns remains my favorite Linkin Park album, but for ambitious reasons. But this album, I think, has become a super, super close second, following right behind that. And I should say that it is now one of my favorite Linkin Park albums to date. So this is essentially my re-review. I hope you guys think that it is better than my last one. What do you think of The Hunting Party? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? Why or why not? Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. I'm Mr. Music Fan. Take care, guys.